Hi guys, welcome back to my channel, The Little Craft House. For those of you who haven't met me before, I'm Nicole and I am obsessed with making polymer clay earrings. So recently I have been loving making lots of hoops, loops, links, amongst other things. So last week I did a tutorial all about hoops, which was super popular and you guys have been asking me for more. The tutorial today includes these links as well as a couple of other ideas. Hopefully you guys find them really interesting and enjoy it. Any questions, please feel free to ask me in the comments box, and I will link last week's hoops tutorial in the description box because some of the ideas I refer to from last week as well. So thanks for joining me and let's get started. Right, so the colours I've chosen to work with today, I've got, what is this one called? Yellow ochre. We've got some black, we've got white, and I am using my precious French pink. So this is all I've got left of French pink. We haven't had any more deliveries in store and we haven't got any sort of notification that any more is coming back. So I am trying to be very careful with how I use this, but I'm very excited about this first design we're going to do. So I'm happy to use it for this. Cut some of that off. All right, so yes, as I say, this first design I am super excited about. I did a little mock-up test piece yesterday, a little prototype, and I'm quite happy with how it turned out. The only thing is I was going to do a checkerboard and I thought I would preview the checkerboard. This is what I did, but I've decided that it's too small. I want it to be a bigger checkerboard. So we'll work through that now very quickly, and then we'll get on to actually designing the earrings. So I have got pretty sure I've got a full tutorial on creating the checkerboard effect. If I haven't, I've definitely done some shorts before and talked about how to do it. So if you do want to go more in depth, just go back. I'll try and link them in the comments section, and then you'll know step by step properly how to do it. Right, so I'm just loading up my extruder. Now I used this cap, still dirty. I used this cap yesterday for that small one. I want the strands to be bigger than that. So I think we're going to go that one. Yep, that's definitely bigger. So because I have covered this technique before and today is just all about hoops and loops and links and things, I might just do this in a time lapse, and yeah, we'll go over it just briefly, but otherwise, yeah, as I say, I'll link to the full tutorial of how to do this technique in the comments, and that way yeah, you'll be able to watch step by step how to do it there. All right, so I'm just going to trim off these little odd edges just so they don't confuse me. Now all these little scrappy bits, I do put them to the side and I will use them later, so it's not a waste. I'll probably put them into a like scrappy mix that I do and mix them all together because black and white looks really great. Just ends up being like a marble effect. Okay, so It's still not perfect, still not overly happy with how it turned out, but it is better than this one. So I seem to have lost my knack, but that's okay. I'm just a little bit out of practice. This will still work fine. So I've got this rounded square cutter here, and I have a little teardrop cutter. So I'm going to make a hollow shape using these two to create our links for joining together. So I need 2 pieces of this, or 2 pieces from this, and I'm going to use 2 pieces from the pink. Now, something I like to do when cutting hollows is leave the cutter in place whilst I cut out the internal. It just helps to stop the clay from squishing out and then distorting that original shape. If I can get that internal out successfully, then I can use that as a topper of another piece afterwards. He didn't want to come out successfully, so just pop him to the side. Right, so I've got those 2 pieces, and now I'll just do the same with the pink. Remember to wipe my cutters down between each go, otherwise I end up with that colour transfer on my pretty pink colour. Okay, so I'm going to let you in on a trade secret for creating the perfect links. The secret is to bake them as is for 10 minutes first. So by baking them for the 10 minutes, it's going to firm them up, so they're not going to be soft and pliable anymore, and then we'll be able to cut the joining pieces. So just on my baking tray and in the oven for 10 minutes. So these have been baked up now for that 10 minutes, and as you can see, they are firm enough and hard enough that I can now work with them without them bending and reshaping. If your pieces are a little bit rough and need neatening up, now's the time to do it, because once we have linked them into each other, it's going to be hard or harder to sand them and get them finished off nicely. So if you're finding that you've got some rough edges, grab your sandpaper or your buffing tool or whatever you use, which I just did a second ago, just to smooth these out and make them a little bit more presentable. Then once you've done that, I think I am going to do mine as odds like that, and I'm going to make these studs, so they're actually going to just have the stud backing on the tops afterwards, but I need to now link them together. So because I accidentally made these ones a little bit thicker than what they should have been, I'm going to put my slices into the pink ones. So we're going to just grab our scalpel knife. The sharper the better. This one's getting a bit blunt now, it's getting a bit old. And we are just going to do a little slice in that narrow point there. Right, like so. And then what we can do is we can slip our pieces in and have them link like that. Now, obviously, we now have a hole in our pieces. They're not perfect anymore. So we need to finish baking, and we also need to seal that gap. So you can do that in two ways. If you have liquid clay or Bacon Bond or a clay adhesive, then you can apply a little bit of that onto that cut to bond it back together in the baking process. So I'm going to add some liquid Sculpey. I've got the clear translucent, which means that it's not going to add a colour, and it should hold it enough to bake it back together and be one solid piece. If you don't have any of this or a clay adhesive, once you have finished baking them, so put them back in the oven like this, or put them back in the oven like this, and then once they come out of being fully baked, you could use one of your clay glues that you use for attaching your findings, so say like E6000. You could use that after you've baked, and then they will be sealed. Don't put the glue in the oven though, because it will be toxic. So I'm going to use this today, and we'll see how that goes. I will put a disclaimer that I have done this before and it hasn't sealed because my pieces have been too far apart and it's not held strong enough. So hopefully this will work, and if it doesn't, then I'll just glue it with the E6000 afterwards. I'm just looking for something to stir. I need to stir the liquid clay first before I use it. Well, that's a big fat mess, isn't it? Okay, pop that on my tray. So I'll pop these back in the oven now for the remainder of their baking time, and which is about another 45 minutes, and then they should be done. Okay, so I just thought I would quickly show you what would happen if you linked them whilst they were raw without doing that pre-bake. So excuse the disgusting colour, it's just my prototypes that I was playing around with scrap clay. So what would happen if you had raw clay? I did cut that. If you had raw clay and cut it and linked it and put it together while it was raw, you get a nicer seal here. However, when you bake it, your pieces wouldn't be flat. And see how it's got that wibble wobble in it? That would happen while it bakes, and then once it's finished baking, your pieces would be all wibbly wobbly and they wouldn't sit nicely like ours are going to today. They may also bond together like that and actually stick, and you might not be able to separate them. Now, you possibly could prop them up with things, rice or flour or some beans or something, but I just find the way that I did it is easier for me. Okay, so I've decided to change my mind on the colours that I'm going to use. So I've got some white here, and I've decided I actually want to make it a white granite. So I'm going to add in some grey granite clay into the white to make it a little bit more textured. Okay, next up, we are going to create some links. So I'm pulling out my fancy paper straw here. I can't tell you how much I hate paper straws, but they do come in awesome for crafting. So this is a good way to use them. So I've rolled my polymer clay out to the thinnest setting on the pasta machine. So it's quite thin, and I'm going to roll them. I'm going to roll them around my straw. Now I do want it to meet up here, so I'm just going to stretch it to make it meet and seal it up. Going to smooth out those fingernail marks that I just left in it. And it doesn't matter that it is tight on the straw. If we have difficulty removing it from the straw afterwards, it is paper, so we can just soak it in water if we can't get the pieces off. But I think we should be fine. So what I'm going to do is another pre-bake. So I'm going to pop this into the oven as is on the straw. The straw can go in the oven, that's no issues. Going to pop this in the oven, again, another probably 10 minutes. While that's baking up, you can probably hear the ticking in the background, we're going to work on the next piece. So I'm getting my extruder back out again, and this time we're going to pop some of the yellow ochre into it, and we are using the larger hold disc this time as well. Just got to get this conditioned up and a bit softer. If you don't have an extruder, it's not an issue. You can just use your hands to roll some snakes. And if you've got something like a acrylic plate, that helps as well to roll because it keeps it nice and even and consistent. Now, sometimes when you use the extruder, it does go a little bit wibbly wobbly like that. So just grab that acrylic plate if you do have one. It just helps to smooth it out. Actually, I might also use it to just make it a little bit thinner than what it actually is. So I'll just stretch it out just slightly so it's not quite as thick. So we are going to make our rings for this design now. I'll call them rings. Rings, hoops, loops. And I'm going to use a shape cutter as my guide for making it round. So I'm just going to trim off that end to start with. Now I'm going for a very organic look today, so I don't actually want these to be too perfect, but I do want them to be sort of the same size. So I'm just going to join that together. And do the other one. Okay, so I don't want them to be perfectly round circles, so it doesn't matter if they've just gone a little bit out of shape. And then what I'm going to do is get my pressing tool again, my acrylic plate, and I'm just going to press these down because I want them to squish out a bit and be a little bit flat. Like that. Now, I also want these to have a bit of texture, so I'm going to grab some sandpaper and I'm just going to smudge it over the top. Doesn't have to be too much. I'll lift these up. Probably should have done that first because now I've got to forgot that I have to do both sides. So I'll put some paper on the bottom, some sandpaper on the bottom, some for on the top. It's a little bit mucky, hopefully that doesn't transfer. And when I rub it, it should hopefully transfer onto both sides. Flip it. That would be our other bits ready. Right, so what I'm going to do, I'm doing lots of partial baking today. I'm going to whack these ones in the oven for 10 minutes as well, just to firm them up so that whilst we work on the next bit. And it'll firm them up so that then when we do that next stage, they're not all loose and floppy. So I've just grabbed this one from out the oven. So the clay is nice and firm on it without being fully baked. And we're going to grab our scalpel knife again and we're going to cut some rings from this. So the end pieces are going to be a little bit shabby because I didn't neaten them off to start with. Now clay that's only been baked for about 10 minutes is firm, but we can still cut through it. If we did it for the full time, it probably wouldn't be as easy to cut through. So that's why I like to just do it for the 10 minutes. Right, nice even edge. Now we want to cut these, we don't want to do them too thick, but we also don't want them too thin. So I reckon about there. And I don't have any nifty tricks for keeping these cuts even. As you'll see, I will go winky wonky because that always happens. So I'm always a little bit slow and cautious with the first cut that I do, but after that, once I start getting my rhythm, I'm a little bit quicker. So I just quickly wanted to mention about the polymer clay that I'm using today. I'm using both Sculpey Primo and Sculpey Soufflé. So both of these are really good, strong quality clays. I've also done this technique previously with Fimo and it worked really well. However, I have done it with Sculpey 3 before, and unfortunately the Sculpey 3 was a bit brittle. I don't know if it was the 10-minute baking or whether it was just it in general. So if you do use Sculpey 3, just be a little bit cautious that it may not work. Alright, so I've got all my little linky bits here. Now, the edges of the pinks are a little bit rougher. It's not so noticeable with the white granite ones. So what I'm just going to do is give them a little sand off with some fine grit sandpaper just to see if that will make them look a little bit nicer. It doesn't overly matter. As I say, I want these to be a more rustic, organic feel and look, so they don't have to be perfect. Also be super careful because remember these have only been baked for 10 minutes. Yeah, that's a bit better. Right, so these babes are out of the oven. You can see that beautiful texture that they have on them. I'm loving that. And we're going to add these links to them now. So these don't need to be touched anymore. They don't need any more slices or anything done. We're going to link 2 of these around them. So I think we might go white then pink. So because I'm going to go white then pink, the white one's the joiner one. He's the one that's going to need the little slice in him. Oh, actually, I just need a thinner pink because I need to be able to get my findings on. Cut some of these a little bit thick. All right, change of plan. We're going to go pink then white, just because we're going to use these hooks today. Oop, they're all tangled. And I need to be able to loop that through it. So I think we're going to do pink then white. So the pink is going to get the slice in it. Now I might try and find that original join there. And again, I can seal that gap back up using either the liquid clay, a clay adhesive, or afterwards using the super glue. I think I might go afterwards with the super glue because it's kind of pulling a little bit and it's not sitting closed enough. So yeah, I might do these ones with the super glue afterwards. So I'm going to pop these ones back in the oven now as well. Give them their full cure time. So yeah, probably another 45 minutes back in the oven to fully cure. So I just wanted to show you these ones that I did earlier. So same idea as what we just did, but I just put multiples of the little rings on. And then as a finding, I would either add a hook like that, because the loop is large, I can loop it around, or I would just add a stud post to the back there so that it's a full hoop. So yeah, they're still a work in progress, but I just thought I would show you because very similar sort of idea to what we were just working on, but just, yeah, a different take on it. Okay, so our final set of hoops today are pretty simple. If you caught the last tutorial that I did with the hoops, this was one that I really wanted to include, but I kind of ran out of time because I had way too many ideas on that tutorial. So this one missed out. So I thought I will do it today. I'm just loading up my extruder. It's being a bit stubborn. Why doesn't it want to go in? Just loading up my extruder with the black clay. Go in there. And this time I'm using the head that has the square. Look how dirty my hands are. So the square head. I hope that's enough. Let's clean my hands. Alright, so I'm just going to use the acrylic plate again just to smooth those ends because it did go that little bit wibbly wobbly. And I'm just going to cut this in half. I probably needed it a bit longer, but that's okay. And a nice sharp edge on these ends. So we're nice and square, and we're just going to really simply twist it. And we're going to shape it around a shape cutter. So I'm just going to move this actually over onto my, oh yeah, definitely big enough. I'm going to move it over onto the baking tray. Actually, let me grab that. You see how it's got that nice twist to it? Kind of like licorice. Okay, so they are super simple, super easy, and they look really awesome just with that little twist in them. So into the oven with these guys. Alrighty, so we are all baked up now. I glued the little gaps on these ones with the E6000 glue just to make sure that they're nice and secure. And these ones, it's a little bit noticeable, but not overly because it's going to be hanging in the middle there anyway. These ones were fine with the, what did I use? Liquid clay. They were fine with that. Now, hoops. If you saw my last hoops video, you would have seen there was a little trick for embedding posts. I didn't do it on this one. I kind of forgot. If you do want to see that trick, you'll have to go back and watch that tutorial because yeah, there's an awesome little trick for embedding posts. But I'm not going to embed these ones obviously because I've baked them now. So I'm just going to use my E6000 glue and glue the posts to the end there, and that should work fine. Then with these ones here, I am going to attach these large loop hooks to them, and with these ones here I will also just be gluing on the back at the top there. So I'm going to leave the gluing ones for afterwards, and I'll just quickly attach these now. Will it fit? Yes. That's why I didn't want to have them too thick, because I knew that I needed to make them be able to fit. awesome. I love them linky ones. They're so much fun. Oh, where'd my other hook go? And the best thing about these two designs is that they don't require any sanding other than those little sandy bits on the side there. But because these are the organic that we just squished, and because we just twisted these ones, they don't need sanding like general pieces do and like I had to do around the edge of those. Alrighty, look at those. Cool. Well, I'm really happy with how all my little links and loops turned out today. I hope you guys have enjoyed this tutorial. I hope you've been inspired to create some things yourself. And yeah, thanks for joining me. Hope you've enjoyed it, and I shall see you next time. Bye.